Well, the pressure is certainly mounting on US President Joe Biden to step down after an agonising press conference at the NATO summit. The media stint was meant to ease concerns and prove he is the Democrats' choice to take on Donald Trump at November's election. Well, joining us live is Axios politics reporter Erin Doherty. Erin, good afternoon to you and thanks so much for joining us. Of course, many people across both Democrats and Republicans are saying that Joe Biden and his gaffes were front and centre of that speech that he gave post the NATO summit. Some big gaffes there. How is he looking in terms of the current polls?
Yeah, so polling is mixed. Heading into the debate last month when President Biden, as you mentioned, appeared very shaky at times and sort of sparked concerns about his ability to lead. Polling ahead of the debate showed former President Trump with a slight lead. And in recent weeks, we've seen that polling favors Trump a little bit more. Nothing has changed dramatically in the polling. And of course, polling is just a snapshot in time, and we're still months away from the November election, so things can change. But what this sort of indicates is that President Biden was unpopular before his debate performance, and now as he's facing mounting criticisms for him to step aside from some members in his party, he sort of faces an uphill battle ahead of November. This is also particularly important. You know, the election is likely going to be very, very close, and what's likely going to help President Biden in November is turning out voters who may otherwise step aside. And so he needs to not only not turn them away, but he needs to get them excited to turn out. And so that's sort of his current challenge heading into November.
What are we looking at in terms of the 7 swing states?
Yeah, so former President Trump appears to have a slight lead in several of the swing states, but the President Biden's campaign has been campaigning aggressively in this state, in these swing states. President Biden has a campaign rally scheduled this weekend in Michigan, which is obviously a key swing state, and they've spent really aggressively to run campaign advertisements across the swing states. But of course, former President Trump is doing the same. He is ramping up his campaign spending as we sort of enter this pivotal time in the campaign. And so I do expect that both candidates are going to continue to battle out in these crucial swing states ahead of November.
An interesting question from one of the journalists in the summit yesterday, Erin, I noticed, was Joe Biden saying that he believes he's best to govern and he thinks he's the best to qualify and win. And he also said that there are other people who could beat Trump too, but it's awfully hard to start from scratch. What do you make of that assessment regarding others starting from scratch?
Yeah, so this has been sort of a statement that President Biden has said throughout his campaign. He has repeatedly said that, you know, he's the only Democratic presidential candidate who has beaten former President Trump. Obviously, he beat him in 2020. And so while he has sort of conceded that there may be other Democrats who would put up a strong fight and even possibly win, he's the one with the track record to have already beaten former President Trump at the ballot box. And so that is sort of what his sort of thinking behind that statement is that we've seen before. But it's also sort of an attempt for him to, you know, kind of put his party on a pedestal and show that, you know, take an aim at former President Trump, saying that there probably are other candidates who could beat him in November.
We're seeing donors, high-profile people speaking out about their thoughts that Joe Biden should step away from the race. No doubt we'll see many more in the coming weeks and months. Of course, we've got a big week next week. But what do you see playing out here?
I think that it's going to continue at this current moment until, I think, if we see some of President Biden's closest allies on the Hill, such as former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, if she issues a very definitive statement in support of him. She has obviously said that she stands behind President Biden as president, but she said this week in a statement that she kind of wants that she will trust whatever decision he makes. And so I think if she unequivocally says, or if she equivocally says that President Biden is the nominee and that's who should lead our ticket, I think that is one thing to be watching. But I think that we're going to continue to see these calls. But if President Biden continues to have press conferences such as he had last night, which, you know, despite the gaffes, he did quell some concerns about his age by giving, you know, comprehensive answers on foreign policy and domestic policy, I think that could quiet some of the critics ahead of November.
Erin Doherty, we've got to wrap it up, but great to see you. Thank you so much for your time and expertise.
Thank you so much.